Welcome once again to our certified Christian mediator training. This is module 10 of the training, and I want to congratulate you for coming this far. I acknowledge your dedication and commitment to learning and growth. It is noteworthy. Now, in this module, we will be discussing workplace conflicts and Christian mediator. I'm Reverend Dr. Temilolu Liu, and it's my pleasure to facilitate this module of the training. This is the College of Christian uh, Professionals and Researchers, a College of Spirit Road Theological Seminary. Now, in this module, we will discuss how to resolve conflicts in the workplace using Christian mediation principles. We'll discuss mediating employee-employee disputes with biblical wisdom, and we'll talk about how to promote a Christ-like culture of cooperation and mutual respect. To start with, I want to show you the nature of workplace environments generally. Now, in every workplace environment, you have the work you ought to do, the duties, the tasks, the responsibilities, and then the people you are to do it with. You cannot avoid interactions, in the workplace. You have to relate with people. In the very least, you have to communicate and you have to collaborate. And the presence of people relating with them, communicating with them, collaborating with them is all you need for conflicts to happen. Wherever people have and relate, with one another, conflicts are bound to happen. The question is, how do you resolve or address these conflicts? More so, when you spend more time with these people over and over again every day, conflicts become even more likely. Conflicts become even more likely. Now, these conflicts often have, three backgrounds, generally speaking. One is misunderstanding. Someone said something that was misunderstood. Someone did something and their intentions were misunderstood. Another background could be expectations. You expected someone to do something and they didn't do it, or you didn't expect someone to do something, but they did it. You expected somebody to do something, they did it, but they didn't do it as well as you would have expected them to. These are things that can cause conflicts in the workplace. Then irritation is another background for conflict. Irritation, somebody has done something or behaves in a certain way, and their habit or attitude or whatever it is irritates you, or you have some personal stuff that put you on the edge, that make you kind of touchy. You are going through stuff, you become irritated easily, and all. See, these are backgrounds for workplace conflicts: misunderstanding, expectations, and irritation. Let's start by talking about time spent together as we discuss, the factors that contribute to the likelihood of conflicts. Now, most of your waking time you spend at work. If you have 24 hours in a day, you sleep for an average of 8 hours, means you are awake for 16 hours. Of that 16 hours, your regular work time, if you have a regular job, is 8 hours a day on the average. So it means that half of your waking time is at work. Of the remaining eight, out of the remaining 8 hours, you spend time commuting to work and back home from work. So you then realize that a significant portion of your waking hours, you spend it at work. And most of your relational time outside of family, you spend it at work. Most extended time for collaborative efforts, you spend at work, because most of the time you're at work, you are trying to collaborate. Whatever you are doing is a part of a big puzzle, so to speak. And then work-life balance issues too, with how much time you spend at work, how you need to go back home, the nature of the traffic, and a lot of other things. So you then realize that time spent at work itself is one contributing factor to the likelihood of conflict. Another factor that contributes to conflicts is the fact that people depend financially on their job. So anything that threatens their job security, they fight it. If they perceive that their efforts are not being compensated enough, maybe they are underpaid or underappreciated or whatever, this can also cause conflict. Dissatisfaction rather, with performance levels. Dissatisfaction with performance levels. If you are not satisfied with how you are performing, you think you are not earning your salary, so to speak. This can also lead to emotional issues that can then contribute to conflict. So financial dependence is one of the things, one of the major contributing factors to conflict. You can imagine if you think somebody is not doing what they ought to do, and this can eventually affect the performance of your team and can threaten and will threaten your job, you most likely begin to fight that person. You see, that is the nature of workplace relationships, and how financial dependence can affect that. Clash of drives also is another contributing factor to workplace conflict. Some people are goal driven, some are value driven, and some are relationship driven. People who are goal driven are highly focused on achieving their goals, personal goals, professional goals. They just want to achieve the goal. This is what we ought to do. Whatever we need to do to get it done, we must get it done. Now, this can cause conflict because some people are not primarily goal driven, they are value driven, meaning to say, well, I have a sense of ethic and values that I will not compromise on. So if you want me to cut corners to achieve the goal, even though we have a common goal, I will not compromise on my values. And Christians are expected to adopt this value driven life. Doesn't mean you should not be goal driven, doesn't mean you should not be relationship driven, but your value system must be at the center of everything that you do. Now, this can also cause workplace conflict when somebody wants you to lie, wants you to cut corners, wants you to do stuff that will affect your Christian values. This can cause workplace conflict. And then some people are relationship driven. They prioritize building and maintaining positive relationships. So these kind of people will avoid confrontations. They may do everything to please a particular person, even if it will affect the goal and compromise their values. You see, so this clash of drives can cause workplace conflict. So when people come to you as a mediator, and then there is this workplace conflict ongoing, you need to analyze first, what is the background. Okay, is it miscommunication or misunderstanding? Is it an issue with expectation, or is it just an issue with irritation? You need to establish the background. Then you need to identify what are the factors that has contributed. Is it just that these people are spending a lot of time together, and then you know it's leading to issues? Is it that somebody feels that their financial security is under threat? Is it just a clash of values, for instance? And then there can be clash of career goals too. Career goals where two people are competing with one another. Somebody feels I ought to be in that position, another person feels, well, or I ought to get there too. And then they begin to compete for recognition, for awards, different things like that. Now, not only it's not only competition that can lead to conflict. When it comes to career goals, inhibition can also lead to conflict, where someone feels, well, that person is slowing down my progress, maybe due to their non-performance, low performance, or uh, maybe feel there's some form of bad blood, and this person is uh, going behind my back, to do stuff that will actively inhibit my growth or my progress in this career. You see, this can also lead to conflict. Then hindrance, maybe there is a boss is not recommending me for promotion, is hindering my growth. This can also cause conflicts. And then dissatisfaction, I'm not satisfied with how well I'm progressing, how fast I'm going. You see, these are issues that can contribute. They may not be the major reason why the conflict started in the first place, but they can quickly aggravate conflicts. Conflicts that should not have escalated might escalate because of these factors that we are discussing. And as a mediator, you must be skilled in recognizing them. Relationship dynamics, also boss subordinate, power dynamics between managers and team members, and all of that can also contribute to the development of conflicts. Employer employee, terms of employment, compensation, benefits, job security, all of these things can cause conflicts between the employer and the employee. Conflicts and co-workers, I mean colleagues rather, and co-workers. Conflicts can happen between colleagues and co-workers because of differences in communication style, their goals, their work style, and all of that. We've talked about competition earlier on. We've talked about things like jealousy, resentment, things that can irritate. This can cause issues between co-workers. And then customer relationship. Sometimes is between staff and customer, staff and client. These issues can cause or can contribute to the development of workplace conflicts. Now, as a Christian mediator, you must understand these different factors and be skilled in identifying them. As you listen to people tell their story, talk about what is happening, you must begin to analyze, okay, what backgrounds can I see here? Is this a case of misunderstanding? Is this a case of irritation? Is this a case of expectations? You must be skilled in understanding what are the factors that have contributed in one way or the other to the development of this conflict, or to where these people are found themselves at this point. Now, let's discuss biblical principles to address especially relationship dynamics. You remember we said that the presence of people is all you need for conflicts to develop, and many times as Christian mediators, we are trying not only to resolve issues but to save relationships. So let's look at what the Bible says about workplace relationship dynamics. These are values that should guide how we relate with one another, because if we can solve the relational issues, most of the other issues that may come up in the workplace will be solved easily. So let's start with employer employee relationship, employer employee relationship. Two things: fair wages and justice. Fair wages and justice. The employer is expected to render fair wages, to the employees or to the staff that they have employed. Fair wages. They must not, be cheated. They must not be treated unjustly by the employer. When you read James chapter 5 verse 4, it says, behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you, kept by fraud, cried, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of hosts. That is the truth. God will hear the cries of laborers, of workers that have not been given their fair wages. Don't owe people the money that they have worked for, and these are principles that you must communicate as a mediator. These are values that you must communicate as a mediator. More so, you must, um, promote mutual respect and treating employees justly. It is important because in most cases it is employees that are at the receiving end because of the power dynamic. And Bible also says that the employer, the one who is working, Bible says servant as it were, should uh, carry out their duty as though they were serving the Lord. Carry out your duty as though you are serving the Lord. Don't do it as unto men, as men please, as Ephesians chapter 6 from verse 5 to 6. And then when you get to verse 9, the Bible now talks to the employer. He said, do the same thing to them, forbearing, threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven. Don't make use of violent words. Don't make use of threats. Don't abuse them, knowing fully well that there is a God in heaven and he has no respect for people's positions. There's no respect of person with him. So understand that at the end of the day, God is the judge between employer and employees, and God is looking at how both sides are treating one another. So again, these are values and principles that you must communicate as a Christian mediator. How about between boss and subordinates? The Bible talks about servant leadership. Leaders ought to serve with humility. Leaders ought to serve with humility. Mark chapter 10, verse 42. Jesus said, that they that are counted to rule over the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and their great ones exercise authority upon them. Verse 43, he says, but it shall not be so among you. Whoever will be great among you shall be your servant, and whoever of you will be the chiefest shall be servant of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life as a ransom for many. So you realize that Jesus talks here, about servant leadership. And as a Christian mediator, you must promote this concept in all your mediation processes. Colossians chapter 3 verse 21: fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. That principle can be applied to any relationship where there is, power balance issues, employer employee, boss subordinates. Now about among colleagues at work, unity and harmony. Collaborate with one another in unity. It is good when brethren dwell together in unity. When you understand unity and harmony, it will be easier to accomplish the common goal. It will be easier to address conflicts and, to resolve them quickly. And then, how about customer relationships? Again, Colossians chapter 3 verse 23 24 says, whatever you do, do it with all your heart, as if you are doing it for God and not for men, knowing that of the Lord you will receive the reward of inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ. So you must promote this mindset of, service to God in everything that people do. So when you're in mediating customer client issues, you must promote this world view, that at the end of the day, what you are doing is not for the customer, you are doing it for the Lord. And uh, you must put that, as the overall view of everything that you do in your workplace. Now, as Christian mediators, these are biblical principles that we promote to help address relational issues, because at the end of the day, if we can all agree on these principles, it's going to be much easier, to resolve whatever issues have come up along the line. Now, we want to talk about the manifestations of workplace conflicts. We've talked about the backgrounds, we've talked about things that can, the factors that can contribute to these conflicts. And then part of that is where we dealt with relationship dynamics and what the Word of God says about them, so that you know the principles to promote in your mediation processes. But now, the manifestations of conflicts, what storylines are you likely to hear? um, Communication issues, misunderstandings, poor communication, misinterpretation of messages. All of these things can lead to conflicts between co-workers, between employees, between employer employees, supervisor subordinate. Personality clashes can also happen. Differences in personality, the styles of work and values can create tension and conflicts in the workplace. There's this one who is sanguine, there is this one who is phlegmatic. Definitely they have different personalities, different temperaments, and they are most likely going to approach issues differently. These can cause conflict of interest also, when one person has a particular interest, another person has another interest, and this can begin to cause clashes among them. Sometimes it's personal interest, not even uh, an interest that will benefit all. And sometimes the two people have good intentions, they feel this is what is going to help everyone, and then there's a clash in that. And then competing goals and priorities can also cause conflict when team members have conflicting goals, priorities, people trying to meet their deadlines and all of this. Part of this is where you talk about resource allocation, you know because people, uh, maybe there's limited resource and people have deadlines, and this one wants to have access to this resource, another one says, well, I need it more than you do, and then their priorities begin to clash. Workload imbalance can also cause, or can also be a manifestation of conflict, or workplace conflict, where there is perception of unfair distribution of work or unequal contributions among team members. These are things that can lead to the manifestations of conflict. Performance issues also, disagreements related to job performance, feedback, evaluations, expectations. All of these can lead to conflicts between uh, 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 especially employer employee, or supervisors and subordinate. Micromanagement, when superiors excessively monitor or control people that are under them. This can create frustration, and at the end of the day, conflict. Bullying and harassment is also one of the ways that conflicts can quickly manifest. discrimination, verbal abuse, misuse of power, and all of that. I've talked a bit about resource allocation already. Then there is the issue of change and restructuring, adaptation issues where there are disputes, relating to changing the organizational structure, or someone who is just not satisfied with the organizational structure, or maybe there are some transfers sometimes, in some cases reassigning of roles and different things like that. All of these can lead to conflicts. Now, when these conflicts begin to manifest as a Christian mediator, how do you resolve them? These are general biblical values and principles. Now, beyond the relational values, these are things that you need to master as a Christian mediator. They must be at the forefront of your mind. And one thing is this: we have taught different biblical values in different areas through the course of this training. I don't expect that all of them will be in your head, but I expect that if you have a mediation case, you can quickly find, this lecture, get a hold of your notes, review these principles again, listen to this lecture one more time before your consultation sessions and then mediation sessions. Refresh your mind on these values. The more you interact with them, the more you relate with these values, the more you refresh your mind, the more they become readily available. So it's a journey, it's a process. It will take a little while, but they will eventually become a part of you. Now, where there are communication issues or miscommunication issues, one principle that can help is the principle of truthful communication. The principle of truthful communication. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25. Put away lying, speak every man truth to his neighbor, for we are members one of another body. Meaning to say what you mean what you say, and believe what people have said. Believe. Bible says love believes all things. So don't second guess. Believe. Take them for their word. So the value of truthful communication. Now, when there are personality clashes, you promote, the value of love and patience. Value of love and patience. The same Ephesians 4 in verse 2. With all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering. It says, forbear with one another in love. Forbear with one another. Forbear with one another. You know, encourage empathy, encourage understanding, patience in dealing with co-workers that have different personalities. You cannot force people to be like you, but you can cope with them and understand their uniqueness. Where there are, for instance, conflicts of interest, you need to promote the value of fairness and integrity. Fairness and integrity, in decision making. Don't put your personal interest at the forefront. Think of others, more than yourself. That's what the Bible says. Now, when it comes to issues with competing goals and priorities, promote the value of unity and cooperation. Promote the value of unity and cooperation. In Ephesians 4:3 says we should make every effort to keep the unity of the spirit through the bond of peace. So emphasize teamwork and collaboration, where everybody is making efforts to make sure that there is no breakdown in unity, that everyone keeps working towards the same common goal. Where there is workload imbalance, you can promote the value of servanthood. The greatest among you will be the servant. Now, that is not to say that you don't talk about, equity and justice and all of that, such that one person will not be overworked and underpaid. We've talked about that before. That if people have worked, you give them what they deserve for their hire. But at the end of the day, if somebody has to carry some burdens, now, whoever is in charge must know that whoever is working more deserves to be rewarded more, deserves to be the greatest among them, because the person has taken the place of a servant. So you encourage that culture. Meanwhile, also encourage the culture of helping one another. Helping one another beyond the equitable workload distribution. Wherever somebody is falling short, it doesn't cost much, especially when it is not deliberate. Help, unity, cooperation, servanthood. Now, where there are performance issues, constructive feedback is definitely a biblical value. People should be able to give constructive feedback. Philippians 2:4. referred to this scripture earlier. Let each person look out not only to his own interest but also to the interest of others. In other words, you are not even talking to now. When there are performance issues, one person may have heard their grievance to the other person feels hurt, and then conflict begins. Understand that in such cases, one of the things that as a mediator you must promote is the fact that, well, this person may not have done well, yes, but you should not speak based on your personal interest or talk to give feedback based on how you do not like their performance, but how their lack of performance can in the first place affect them, affect your relationship, affect the goal that you are working towards. You see, that is less selfish, more considerate, and it is likely to not lead to conflicts. Meanwhile, the person who is receiving feedback must understand that it's absolutely normal. It's good that people are willing to give feedback, and they must receive it in good faith. The value of trust is good for leaders that are micromanaging. Leaders that are micromanaging. Trust, delegate responsibilities. Don't carry the whole world on your head. The value of trust, the value of trust. And then one thing that I need to mention here is that what you trust is not primarily people. What you trust is God in them. God in them. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. So again, you trust God in people. In mediating, one of the things that you must promote is the fact that if this person is submitted to God, you can trust God in them that they will do well. You can trust God in them that they will not mess things up intentionally. So you must be willing to commit things into their hands, and then the one who is handling things or who is being trusted with things must remember that they are doing it as unto God, and they ought to do it with all dedication and seriousness. The value of love and respect, that is one value that is helpful in cases where there is bullying and harassment, where there is issue with resource allocation. You can teach the value of stewardship, where there is change in organizational structure or transfers and all of that. You can talk about trusting in God's plan, for those who are dissatisfied with that. But remember that in all of these, you must continue in your mediation uh, processes to encourage whoever is in the place of power to rule with the fear of God. Because again, I must be clear that in most workplace conflicts, the power dynamics is not usually good. There is usually somebody who is the boss and somebody who is at a lower, cadre or whatever. Uh, Many times, even if it's among colleagues, there is usually one who is the senior, one who is the junior. Where they are on the same level, there's usually one who has the ears of the people that matter, and then that gives the person a higher advantage over the other. So the power dynamics may not always be good, but you balance these with values that everyone must subscribe to. But beyond these biblical values are legal ethics and standards that must not be violated come what may. For instance, you talk of anti-discrimination laws, where people must not be discriminated based on their race, their gender, their age, their disability, even their religion. Yes, they must not be discriminated. So again, in all the ways of promoting biblical values and all of that, we must stick with this. If your mediation process violates these standards, you may become liable in court, and whatever mediation agreement you have reached can be thrown away in court later on. So you must adhere to these legal and ethical standards. There are legal and ethical standards on harassment policies. There things like sexual harassment and all of that. You cannot cover those things up. There are things that you can just deal with, and then everybody moves on. But things like sexual harassment has a laid down legal procedure, for addressing, and you cannot overlook that. You cannot let an offender go scot free under the guise of, okay, we just want mediation, except in the case where the one who is harassed is voluntarily deciding to go that way. Now, labor laws also are there, that cover various aspects like minimum wage, overtime pay, working hours, and all of these things. Whistleblower protection is also an ethical standard. People who report illegal or unethical activities within their organizations. And then conflict resolution procedures. Uh, you must understand the legal frameworks behind these things as a Christian mediator, and you must adhere to them in all your mediation processes. Don't say because you are trying to make peace at all cost, now somebody is violating labor laws, underpaying, not paying overtime, and then the staff is dissatisfied. It's leading to a conflict issue, and you are telling the staff, just serve as if you are serving God and all of that. Now, that would be wrong. That would be definitely wrong. You must promote the value of paying people what they are due, and then bringing in the legal standard that addresses that area. Another legal standard is standard of confidentiality and privacy. Confidentiality and privacy. Employers must respect the privacy of their employees and maintain confidentiality of sensitive information. So things like personal information, ensuring that surveillance and monitoring are conducted within legal limits, for instance. So these are things that you must ensure are not violated in all your mission processes. Codes of conduct. Many organizations have their codes of conduct. Many professions have their codes of conduct that everyone within the frames of that profession must follow. As a Christian mediator, your mediation process must factor these things and not encourage or support their violation or overlook their violation. Equal opportunity, you know, diversity initiatives, for instance. You must promote and encourage these standards. Issue of contractual agreements. If contracts have been signed, there are specific terms and conditions for it, for example, employment contract, promotion contract, and all of that. Please remember that in all your mediation processes, you must stick with the terms of that contract. Otherwise, except again, both parties agree to set aside occupational health and safety. Employers by law are required to maintain a safe and healthy work environment. For example, providing proper training that will ensure people remain safe and not in the line of danger, providing equipment, safety protocols, and all of these things. You see, in your mediation process, if you need to refer to this, you must refer to them and they must be adhered to. You cannot violate them, you cannot set them aside, you cannot act as if they do not matter, because they really do matter. Again, it is very important, because if you violate these principles as a mediator and your mediation process does not reflect it, or your mediation agreement violates these legal and ethical standards, they will be set aside by a competent court of law if they ever get contested. That is the truth. So, for the validity of your mediation process and the agreement you are going to reach, you must adhere to this legal and ethical standard. One more thing I need you to pay attention to in your mediation process is to identify the conflict handling intentions of those who have come to you. Now, you are going to analyze based on their cooperativeness and their assertiveness, concern for others and concern for self. Concern for others, concern for self. There are people who are accommodating, meaning to say, they will just take anything. They try to adjust to accommodate others, whatever they are doing. Well, easy peasy, no problem, and all of that. These are people who have a high level of cooperativeness and low level of assertiveness. They are the friendly helpers. And then there are people who have a both low level of cooperativeness, low level of assertiveness. They cannot assert what they want and they cannot cooperate with others, so they just avoid. They just avoid. Low level of assertiveness, low level of of cooperativeness. They have low concern for others, low concern for self. Now there are those who have very high concern for self and low concern for others. So they are very assertive, but they are not too cooperative. These are those that are very, very, very competitive. You see a lot of competition going on. And then there are those who have a very high level of concern for self, high level of concern for others. Those people compromise. They compromise a lot, but they find, sorry, they collaborate rather. They collaborate a lot. So they find ways where they can merge, their interest with other people's interest and work together on something that can be mutually beneficial. But you see, the balance to all of this is compromising, where you know that at the end of the day you must compromise for a win-win solution. It's not just about collaborating when you have your own quote and unquote hidden interest, but you are just trying to coast along and trying to find a way where you can merge. At the end of the day, if you collaborate, it gets to a point where you can no longer continue, except the conflict of interests, or the issues that or places where you do not agree have been resolved already. So again, at the end of the day, the mindset of compromise must be promoted. Again, when people come to you for mediation, analyze their conflict handling intention and make sure you drive them to a place where they are actually willing to compromise. Everybody cannot hold their position if they really want the conflict to be resolved. People cannot continue to hold their position and expect that the conflict will be resolved. So bring them to the place where everyone is willing to compromise, everyone is willing again to reconcile, and then to move on from the conflict and act in the best interest of the relationship. As I round off, let me discuss the do's and don'ts of workplace conflict mediation. Christian workplace conflict mediation. Again, remain neutral. We have said this over and over again, over and over and over again, as we have gone through this training. Remain neutral, remain neutral, remain neutral. Stay impartial throughout the mediation process. Don't take sides, don't show favoritism. Then ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions will encourage people, the parties, to share their thoughts, to share their feelings, to say exactly what is on their mind, so that you can clarify issues and uncover underlying concerns. Then explore solutions. Explore solutions. Facilitate a discussion on possible solutions and compromises. Help them to brainstorm and consider different options. You are not just working towards collaboration, you are working towards compromise. So explore different solutions. Don't impose anything on them. Let them, brainstorm and come up. You can suggest also, but let them come up with solutions. And then remain patient. Remain patient. Be patient. Allow the process to unfold as at its own pace. Don't rush the process. Sometimes some workplace conflicts may take time to resolve. Remain patient. Remain patient. Allow people to express themselves. Remain patient, even when people are acting in a frustrating way. Just be patient, be calm, and then document agreement. It is very essential in workplace conflict to document any agreement you reach during the mediation. In most cases, maybe not in all cases. If it's just a domestic issue, you can resolve and everyone moves on. But if it's a major issue, please make sure you document the agreement, where there are action items are there, the timelines are there, so that there's something to hold people accountable with, and then follow up on them uh, based on that agreement. What are the things to avoid, in workplace conflict mediation? We've said that already. Don't take sides. Don't take sides, and don't minimize feelings. Don't dismiss or minimize the emotions of those involved, because at the end of the day, emotions are very, very, very vital for reconciliation. That's the truth. If people do not heal, it is difficult to reconcile. People may forgive, but until they heal, they cannot truly reconcile. So please don't minimize feelings. Don't minimize feelings, and then don't interrupt. Let them finish speaking before responding. During the mediation process, don't form the habit of interrupting people. If you do that consistently, you give them the idea that you want to shut them down, they are not permitted to talk. And what then happens is they keep information to themselves. And well, that's the beginning of failure for the mediation process. Also, do not assign blames. Don't assign blames. Avoid placing blame on either party. Focus on finding solutions and moving forward. Uh, Listen to what has happened, but the pertinent question should be, where do we go from here? Not who is right, not who is wrong. Where do we go from here? And finally, please don't avoid difficult topics. Don't assume that they will just fizzle away. Don't shy away from addressing sensitive issues, that need to be addressed during the mediation process. So these are things that you do, these are things that you must pay attention to in mediating workplace conflicts. With that, we have come to the end of this module. There is really so much to say, on conflict resolution in the workplace. One of them is on the issue of the procedure. I want you to please refer to the teaching on how to prepare for your mediation process. It applies here, so we will not, go into all of that again. Thank you one more time for listening. I'm glad that you have come this far. We're gradually moving towards the end of, this training. Contact details are on your screen. Please reach out to us for any of your queries and concerns. And don't forget to drop your name. Let me know where you have listened from, what you have gained from this module, and how it will help in your practice of Christian mediation. God bless you till we meet again in the next module.